Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have a special guest. Before I present our special guest, I'm Audrey Glover-Dictor with Glover-Dictor PL. I'm your one-stop legal boutique to keep businesses legally compliant. So today I have Yvonne Dom, who will help me discuss a very important topic for business compliance.
Hi, Audrey. Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Yvonne. Thank you for joining us.
It's my absolute pleasure. As I'm an executive business coach and I work with a lot of business owners, and one of the things that I constantly see is business owners put their business at risk with not having the right privacy policies or terms of use. And that's why we're going to discuss that today with Audrey, who is the expert in this. Now, Audrey, before we dive into it, can you explain to everybody what's the difference between the privacy policy and the terms of use?
Sure, great question, Yvonne. So the difference is that the privacy policy tells the user what personal identifiable information, which is also known as PII, you are collecting, or your website or your app or your social media or whatever the platform is collecting from the user. And not only what are you collecting, why are you collecting it, what do you do with it, who you share or sell it to, and the purpose, and how long do you keep it, and how they can reach out to you under different laws on how to either correct or delete or different potential reasons to connect with you.
I love that. And why are they important? I mean, everybody's heard of them, but why have them?
Right. So the terms of use or terms and conditions, whichever way you want to call them, they're all basically the same. And what they tell us, those are the rules of the website, the app, the platform that you're using online, whatever it is that you're on. So those are the rules that tell us the do's and don'ts on how to use that platform or that website. They are both legally binding contracts. So if you don't have them, then you don't have those contracts to protect your business. If you're not protecting your business, you're not protecting yourself, you're not protecting your families. But interestingly, and most importantly, they're legally binding contracts that do different things, different protections. So it's your legal risk needs, right? You're minimizing your legal risks by having such different legal contracts. So that's why they're both important, but they're both very different because they do different things.
Okay. So you're saying if I do not have any privacy policy on my website, then am I non-compliant, or how does it work?
Well, correct. So we have a lot of different privacy laws around the world.
Mhm.
I'm going to speak about GDPR from the EU because that is the one that is very well known around the world right now. And it is a very huge, all encompassing privacy law for consumers. So in the US, we don't have a GDPR, we have a different system. In the US, we have federal laws that are privacy very focused on particular industries. Like the health industry has HIPAA, whereas because we don't have a GDPR federal law, then the states are taking it upon themselves to pass their own consumer protection privacy laws. So, for example, California has the California Consumer Protection Act and the Consumer Rights Act, so CCPA, CPRA, and then we have different states are passing different legislation, and eventually, little by little, as there's different laws for different states are taking effect. So the differences are, I mean, each state is different, each
Mhm.
law is different, and then each country or each part of the world has their own privacy laws. So once online, always online. And it's very difficult to say, oh, please, website, don't go into the EU, right? As of right now, I don't know if the technology being able to do that. So the question is, who lands on your website? Who is using the platform? Who is using the app? That's going to pretty much, determine which privacy law applies, which means these are all legally requirements. You're legally required to have a privacy policy because you have to inform your user about which privacy law affects them and the rights that they have under such laws. So that's why the privacy policy is so important, because they're legally required, period. Regardless whether you call them whatever you want to call them, you have to tell the users what their legal rights are under their particular law. But you don't know which law that is, because you never know who's landing on your website or who's using the platform. So the question is, which law should your privacy policy cover? So it gets a little convoluted, and that's why you need to have an attorney who knows what they're doing draft the privacy policy for you. You cannot copy and paste from anywhere else, besides the fact that you could be infringing, but let's not even go there. That's a whole other ballgame. But the most important thing is, in order to protect your business, the privacy policy has to be written for your business. And if you copy and paste, you're not protecting your business. So that's why that's so important.
So, but if I understand you correctly, you're saying you have to basically, because your website is online and could reach potentially everybody in the world, you need to be aware and have a privacy policy, because we're talking about privacy policy now, that covers every country, every state in the States, every country in the world, so that you're always covered and you're always following whatever law there's out there. Am I correct?
Yes, but there's always a but, right? So this is where drafting it correctly for the business comes into play. Not every US business is doing business in Australia. So do we need to be legally compliant with that? I don't know. So that's all going to determine. So when I speak with my clients, I make that determination as to what we need to add, what we don't need to add to the privacy policy. What language do we need to add in there so that they can be legally compliant? So it really is important to gear it towards the client's needs and the client and the business, as opposed to an all general policy that you just copy and paste from anywhere.
Right. So we always need a specialist basically to cover ourselves and to make sure we're compliant. And that will be you.
Yes.
Yes. And what happens if we're not compliant?
Well, a lot of things can happen. So let's say you're not compliant. Hopefully, the person would either contact you to ask questions as to your legal policy compliance, or instead of suing you. Or if they don't sue you, because in the US we're a very litigious society, so that's always an option. With regards to other countries, there are other options as to filing complaints with the appropriate agencies within certain countries, or the EU has a whole different department where people can file complaints. So yeah, it depends where the person's from. It depends what the law that will be applicable will be. It depends what the options are for that person who would want to file a complaint. But in the US, everybody always has the option to file a lawsuit, but we're trying to not get there.
Right. And that's what you keep them safe with.
I try.
Yeah. So we spoke about the privacy policy. Now tells us about the terms of use, and you said terms of use is terms and conditions. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I mean, different people call them different things. So it can be terms of use, terms and conditions, but basically it's the same by basic binding legal contract that we have. And that tells us the rules of the game, right? The rules of using your website, the rules of using the platform, the rules of using the app. And basically, we're talking about the rights that you have and how you may lose those rights. And it gives the business the right to terminate somebody's account, assuming that somebody that you give people the ability to have an account on a particular platform, website, or whatever it may be. If that person does something wrong, then under the terms of use and terms and conditions, if they violate those, then you have the right to terminate that account. Also, you have transparency. You tell them, the do's and don'ts. So that's very, very important. Also, it reduces the legal risk because if you terminate an account and that's written in your terms and conditions, then it's a contract. People, when they just click on it without reading it, they're not realizing that they're agreeing to a legal contract. So it's like, would you not read a contract that somebody puts in your face for a service provider? No, right? You're going to read that contract. So guess what? This is the same thing. When
Hmm.
you just click past it, that you agree to it, I get it. Sometimes you want to get there faster by not reading it because a lot of times if you don't read it, you don't have access to the platform. But you need to know what you're agreeing to. For example, there is a platform that if it's a social media platform where when you upload photos in the terms and conditions or the terms of use of that particular platform, it is not considered so far, based on different lawsuits, it is not considered infringement if somebody on that platform shares that photo that you uploaded. Yeah.
So you post a private photo and someone else takes your photo and does something with it, and that's permitted. That's what you're saying?
Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's rephrase that, right? It's not that general. So let's say I share a photo of my dog and somebody likes it,
Which
and
you do.
to and then somebody reposts it. It's like, oh, look. Well, I can't sue that person for infringement of my photo because guess what? Under the terms of use, that person sharing within the platform, it has to be shared within the platform.
Okay.
Then that is not infringement. But if you, let's say, do something else with my photo, then it could be a potential issue. But as
Right.
long as you're sharing within the platform, you're not downloading it, right? And this platform actually makes it that it's not downloadable. So that's considered the server test. So you need to know before you post that photo, what do the terms and conditions say? If I post my picture, will I be able to, am I going to lose control of my picture? Are people going to be able to infringe? So there's
Hmm.
a lot of talk about that.
I hear you. And are you then also saying, because we're speaking about privacy policy, we're speaking about terms of condition, and you're talking about the platforms, which is the business owners is very often their website or, like you're saying, their app or what have you. But does that then mean that if you read my terms and conditions on my website, it tells you as the user of my website what my terms and conditions are for my website?
Yeah.
And do I then have separate terms and conditions to, for example, my coaching contract, or do I have all at one and I'm hosting them on my website?
That's a great question, Yvonne. Actually, okay, so your website is an asset to your business. So it should be protected with its own terms and conditions. Okay, because that's the terms and conditions or the terms of use are particularly for that platform, that website, that app. Now, when you work privately with your clients, your terms may not necessarily be exactly the same as using your website, right? People use you when they land on your website. There's things you don't want them to do, like copy and paste to your website and plop it down into their own website. That's a huge infringement problem. But that, yeah, obviously. Oh, and here's another one. Also, here's a biggie. You do not. You don't want people to take everything on your website, scrape through your website, and use it to train their AI models with your permission, with your license, right? They should ask for your permission. You should be able to give them a license to be able to use what's on that website or whatever other platform in order to train that model. You can't just take what you find and use it without consent, knowledge, or permission. It's just, it's just illegal. It's infringement. So that causes a lot of problems. But going back to your question, one thing doesn't have anything to do with the other, right? You're totally different. So when you work privately with your clients, you should have a contract with those clients for their own means. And you
Right.
should tweak those contracts based on what you're going to be doing. Right?
So if you run a business, you most likely, if I hear you correctly, have more terms of conditions or terms of use. You have one for the website, and if you have like terms and conditions to whatever services you provide, then that's an extra set.
Well, yeah, for example, for me particularly, I have my terms and conditions from my website, right? But when I work with my clients, I send an engagement agreement or
Sure.
a retainer agreement,
Yeah.
which is what we call them in the legal world, right? And it defines my scope of work. Exactly. What is it I'm going to do for that client, the expectations, and the cost, and not just the legal fees, but also if there's filing fees or costs associated with the case. And there's other issues that need to be involved in working with the client that builds trust and sets the rules of how we're going to work together. So those rules are different than what's on your website, right? Because your website, you don't know who's landing on it. So you
Yeah.
can't make it that individualized. Where your contracts, when you work with somebody, it has to be individualized. But having said that, your terms of use have to be individualized to your business.
Mm-hmm.
But they're general legal terms to protect the business from wrongdoers on your website.
Right. Okay, I hear you. So, we've talked about what's a privacy policy. It's totally different from terms and conditions or terms of use, but they're both linked in this instance, what we're talking about, to your website. We know why you need them, because you need to be legally compliant. If not, you can be, sued, basically, especially when you're in the US. We know the differences. Now, who needs these documents?
Everybody.
Everybody, like my mom as well?
Well, okay, every business. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, of course. Okay, so here's the deal, right? I get a lot of oh, I'm a small business. Who cares? I don't really need those. Well, here's the deal. If you want to be a small business, get off the internet. Because once you're on the internet, you're no longer a small business because you're advertising, you're marketing yourself nationally and internationally. And like we said before, the technology right now does not exist where you can say, oh, please don't go into Asia. I don't want to work with those people. Well, no, it doesn't exist. So if you really and truly want to be a small business in 2024 and beyond, then you are going to have to get off the internet. If you're going to stay on the internet, you need to play by the rules. You're going to need to play by the privacy laws. You need a terms and conditions. Well, I want to clarify. privacy policies are legally required. Period. Done.
Mhm.
Oh, well, what if I don't want it? You don't have a choice. If you're online, you need them, regardless what country you're in.
Right. So privacy policy, every business owner needs them, right?
The terms and conditions, okay, there's at least not in the US, we don't have that legal requirement, just like we don't have a legal requirement for entering contracts. But again, the whole point of entering the contracts is to protect your business and to have the scope of work and the scope of the do's and the don'ts and the rights and what you can do as a business owner if somebody does something wrong on your website. Like I said before, if you give them the opportunity to have an account, you can terminate that account if necessary.
Right. So we are legally, we need legally to have privacy policy in terms of conditions. You need to as well if you want to protect your business and your website. Now, let's assume everybody goes to you, right? And everybody gets their privacy policy drawn up and their terms of use and everything for my website is sorted. Am I done or what's going to happen then? Because I have to, right? I'm like,
No, you're so not done. So there is no longer, excuse me, no longer plug it and forget it. Back in the old days, yeah, it was plug it and forget it. But nowadays, in 2024, with the laws changing so much, so often, there isn't such thing. So in the US, as more states pass legislation and they take effect, then your privacy policies need to stay afloat or no, to need to stay, get compliance. So what I do for my clients is for a minimal fee, a monthly fee, I just make the changes on a constantly as the new laws take effect. I go in and I tweak and just bring them up to compliance based on what the new laws are, what the new language needs to be. As far as that's concerned, and the same thing with advertising law, the law changes, intellectual property law, the law changes, data privacy, and AI governance. Let's talk about AI governance for 1 second. I know we scheduled that for today, but just real quick, if and the Federal Trade Commission is now doing enforcement of businesses and been forewarned that are changing the terms of use and terms and conditions without informing the users that now, as part of the rules, you're agreeing to allow such platforms to use all your personal identifiable information, whatever it is that you're sharing, your photos, your information, whatever you're giving them to train their AI models. So heads up, that's, the Trade Commission already put out a warning last week. And I don't know if people saw my post from last week, yesterday, but the Federal Trade Commission is already doing AI enforcement, AI violations enforcement, and that's yet another policy that we should discuss another day. So going back to, data privacy policies in terms of use. No, plug it and format it, you're not done. You still need to update them. I do for my clients as often as necessary because you got to stay up with the law, and that's with both of them.
okay, I hear you. So in short, I think everything to do with the privacy policy, everything to do with terms of use or terms and conditions, people need to see you. Business owners need it. So the best way to contact you is to either send you an email, as per the tagger underneath, audrey@gloverdictor.com, send you a direct message on LinkedIn, or go to the QR and you can book in a meeting right there and right then. And I think our next topic is already out there.
Hopefully, yeah, we need to talk about the AI governance policies. I know I talked about AI last month, but there's so much happening in that world, and it affects everything else in your business. By the way, the terms of use, if you have changes in your business, your terms of use need to be updated based on whatever, to reflect those changes in your business.
Right. So For everybody who watched today, you need a privacy policy. If you don't have one, get one pronto, speak to Audrey. And everybody needs terms of use as well to protect your business and protect yourself. Thank you so much, Audrey.
Well, thank you, Yvonne. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today and listening in. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help out. Have a wonderful day.